can't really do anything about the past, but I can do something about the narrative I have about it and how I hold that and whether or not, I have forgiveness for myself. It is so true if you can't forgive yourself, you can't forgive others.
You're listening to The Final Say, conversations with people facing death. I'm Deborah Jarvis, and The Final Say is the podcast where you can get comfortable talking about death and learn some things about life from people who are facing death. My guest today is Julie Davis, who, before she retired, did a lot of work with nonprofits and for the past couple of years has very much enjoyed being a grandmother and doing volunteer work. I met Julie years ago in Seattle before she and her family moved to Boise, which is where she lives now. Julie has stage 4 lung cancer, and I'll let her tell that story.
I actually got diagnosed in September of 2023, so just about 8 or 9 months ago. And I'd been feeling tired for a year as I look back, but with no specific reason. And I kind of just attributed it to, I'm in my mid-60s, maybe this is part of what happens, your body slows down a little bit. But in retrospect, I realized that it was tiredness with a very specific cause. By the end of August, I was just in really rough shape. Historically, I've had upper respiratory, like sinus infections, and so I was being treated for an upper respiratory infection, and it just wouldn't clear and it wouldn't respond to the various drugs. And so I developed pneumonia. But I had never been that sick.
Yeah.
And then a CT scan, and that kind of confirmed, okay, so you've got stage 4B lung cancer, non-small cell lung cancer, metastatic to the bone, and it's in some other organs. And, it had been partying on in my body aggressively for at least a year. Yeah, so that's how I found out.
Wow.
Yeah.
Just like 0 to stage 4 metastatic.
Yes. Yeah.
What was your reaction?
I was stunned. I was really surprised. I knew I didn't feel well, but I had no idea that it was that.
Why would you think that, right?
Yeah, I didn't. I had been fortunate to have really good health for a long time. So I think, I was really kind of stunned initially and just trying to sort out what that diagnosis actually meant.
So what changed for you as far as how you lived your everyday life?
Oh, a lot. We have 2 children, Margot and Burgess, and Margot gave birth to our first grandchild a couple of years ago, Lucy. The whole first year of her life, I took care of her 2 days a week, which was such a joyful thing. So that was one of the things that I had to give up. I just was in treatment and then not feeling particularly great and just didn't have the energy to take care of, a vibrant little one. So that was that was a big, huge loss. A lot of life kind of slowed down.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, I had to give up volunteer work, and I really just had to focus on treatment for a while. And I think I had to give up, trips back east to see my folks. Both my mom and dad are still living, and my siblings. Yeah, life just kind of really slowed down and became very focused on this thing I couldn't see, but that was really doing its, a number on my body internally.
How did you deal with all those losses? Did you find yourself grieving that, or how did you?
Oh, yeah. The grief was immediate and palpable.
Yeah.
I would say that dealt with it and continue to deal with it bit by bit.
Yeah.
I live with a lot of grief.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's that whole human experience where you can carry grief and joy at the same time. You can live with both of those things, and you focus on this one right now, and then I'm done looking at that, and then I focus on this one. And it doesn't mean it's got to be one or the other.
That's a really good point. You cannot stay you cannot sustain yourself in that place of deep, deep grief
No.
forever. You have to come up for air periodically and consider, the things that are going well. And
What helps you?
a lot of things. I have tremendous support from my family, from Daniel, my husband, from our kids, from my siblings, from extended family, from friends in Seattle, friends in Boise, the Catholic faith that I converted to, and then there's a lot of Buddhism sown throughout it. Faith sustains me.
Mm-hmm.
It is the occasion to dig deep for, what is my spirituality now, and what is my faith, and what does that say about what I'm confronting. My faith is, my current image of it is like a bouquet of flowers that an 8-year-old went out and gathered, and it's got weeds and found objects and sticks and stones and some beautiful flowers in it. And it's beautiful because it's what she picked. But it's kind of a combination of the Protestant faith that I grew up in, the Catholic faith that I converted to, and then there's a lot of Buddhism sown throughout it. I think I question a lot, what to draw from. Mm-hmm. Like what does death mean?
Yeah.
Because it means different things in different faiths. The Catholics have purgatory, and you got to go work on cleaning up your sins before you make the final decision. The Buddhists, it's ashes to ashes and dust to dust, and the whole wonderful sense of impermanence. Mm-hmm. So I think faith and my experience with organized religion has me asking at this point, okay, so which of these things do I really believe in? Which resonates? And that's why I think the piece what resonates for me most right now is that Buddhist sense of impermanence, mm-hmm. That everything is constantly changing.
Yeah,
I find that soothing in a way that I don't find in what does it mean to die within the Catholic faith, mm-hmm. or the Protestant faith. And I'm surprised too by the number of things that are hardwired into us from when we're little.
Yes, because you grew up Protestant.
I did.
Yeah, same.
Yeah. Think about all those things, but I think most of all, what do I believe now?
Yeah.
And what brings me consolation and joy, and what helps me live the life that I have, mm-hmm. while I have it. Why would you not, particularly facing death, or a death that is coming sooner rather than later?
Yeah.
Someone has given you a ticket that said you're getting off the train sooner than later. Why would you not reflect on the different traditions and the life that you've had? Mm-hmm. And so I struggled with that for a while, but have come to a place, I think a place of resting and faith that is okay. That is a living, vibrant faith.
Your Catholic faith, is it any different from your Protestant faith? I mean, it's all Christianity.
It is all Christianity, yeah. That's a great question. I think it's part of that bouquet of flowers and found objects and that I was talking about earlier. I don't think it's terribly different. The heart of it, it's, how do you find God within and God without?
I'm intrigued with this idea of somebody giving you a ticket and going, you're going to get off the train pretty soon, Julie. So how has that just changed your everyday interactions?
I have so much more compassion for others and for myself, and so much more patience with things are just what they are.
Yeah.
Early on, I had this experience of, when I was first sharing the news of my diagnosis, I was struck by the fact that it's hard news for other people to receive. Receiving somebody else's bad news is really hard for people to figure out how to react to. Mm-hmm. And I just shot back in time and had this memory of when my mother-in-law passed away, which was over 20 years ago. And one of Burgess's classmates' mothers ran into me in a grocery store and was expressing her condolences over this. It was the fall, so what I remember was this beautiful display of apples and pears. And she was talking to me, and I was utterly exhausted, completely depleted. And she kept talking to me. I think she was a little nervous and trying to figure out what to say.
Yeah.
And then from that, she pivoted into a story of her own experience with cancer. My mother-in-law died from breast cancer. And I remember standing there thinking, I just wish this would end.
Oh.
I just wish this would end. And I couldn't figure out how to extricate myself diplomatically. And I was really sort of at my wit's end. I did eventually and left. So anyways, fast forward more than 20 years, and I have my own diagnosis, and I'm sharing that information with people. And I thought of her, and I had so much compassion for her.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh, like in my heart, in some, I've held on to that memory like some hard little nut. Like this is a way not to respond when you hear someone else's bad news. And it just melted away. And I felt so much compassion for her and so much compassion for me, because I realized that both of us were doing the best that we could.
Yeah.
And so I would say that in the face of my diagnosis, that's generally what I assume. People are doing the best they can. And then I've also had to let go of how people receive the news or updates, because they bring to it whatever is going on for them.
Right.
And I can't fix it for them. I can't change it. I can't even cushion it, despite my great desire to do all three.
Right.
So I've had to let go of how people read a Caring Bridge post or hear news, and that's been a good teaching for me. I mean, that's kind of like staying in your own lane and letting people have whatever experience they need to have,
Yeah.
and not taking that on,
Right.
or personalizing it.
And knowing it's not about me.
Yeah.
It's really about you. What has been the most soul-feeding reaction that you've gotten from somebody when you told them your diagnosis?
Yeah. Honestly, sometimes it's just the look in people's eyes. Yeah. It's not so much necessarily what someone says. Yeah.
What's been the worst?
The worst is it falls into the have compassion for where people are. Yeah. It just doesn't resonate with me, oh, I hope you win this battle, because my ticket already got stamped.
Yeah.
And I am getting off the train sooner.
Yeah.
The metaphor of a battle is widely used, and I understand why people reach for it, because there aren't many great responses.
I had a dear friend, and what she used to say was, "This is my dance with cancer."
Yeah.
Gwen would say, "I am just dancing.
Yes.
I'm dancing with this, and when the music stops, I'm getting off the dance floor."
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
No a sense of I have to control this, or I have to gird my loins for this, or be hard about this. I'm going to dance. Yeah. Oh, and everybody gets off the dance floor when the music stops. That's a smart thing to do.
Right.
It was so refreshing to me.
Yeah.
I've always loved that metaphor.
That's a great metaphor. I like that one a lot.
Because battle, you win or you lose.
Right.
You don't want to be, so you're a loser. And I often want to say to people, well, we're all losers. Do you have any regrets about your life?
Very few. I really, my sister did this wonderful thing for me, I think for my 65th birthday. She'd saved all the correspondence that we had written one another. For me, it was the decade, in my late teens to like 30 when I became a young mother. And so she gave me this wonderful assortment of birthday gifts. And then there was this odd-sized package, and I wondered what it was. I opened it up, and there were all these letters, postcards, and she'd sorted them chronologically, and she'd reread them. And so she gave them to me, thinking that I would like to read them. I started to read them. I was appalled.
I thought that. I was that person.
Oh my gosh. I could hardly bear it. I think I read like 8 or 9 of them, and I was like, I just have to stop. And I stuffed them into this envelope, this big folder, and I stuck the folder in a corner of my closet. And I didn't touch it again for like a year and a half. And then actually this past summer, and one day I just had this urge to read those letters. And so I pulled the letters out, and I decided for some reason to start reading them in reverse chronological order. So I started reading the ones where, I'm a new mother and I'm just adjusting to so many different changes, and then read backwards. And as I was reading backwards through those letters, I had this newfound compassion for that self that I was during those years. And a bunch of things just dropped away, a bunch of regrets about, I wish I had ended that relationship more cleanly. I wish I had, I don't know what else I wished, but the letters didn't evoke any of the reaction that they did when I first started reading them previously.
When you think about your actual death,
Yes.
what scenario do you have in your head? Do you want to die at home, in a hospital, in the forest?
Yeah. I used to work with this fabulous Sister of Holy Names nun, Catherine Dykman, who did a lot of work around Ignatian spirituality. And I remember having this conversation with her one day, and she said, if you have a sense of how you want to die, it is very important for you to form that intention, to pray with it, to be with it. You may not get it in the way that you envision, but definitely if you have a sense of how you want to die, form that intention. And so I think a lot about Catherine these days, because I think, what is the intention I want to form? I sort of work backwards, things that I don't want. So I'd rather not die in an institutional setting if I could be spared that. I'd rather die at home. I have fears about, dying a very painful death. So I'd like not to be lying there in a lot of pain and torment, which I know would really affect the people who love me and are with me. I'd like to be present enough to say goodbye to them.
Yes.
Oh, I'd probably love some beautiful music in the background. And
do you have a dog right now?
I have a dog, yeah, Keely. She's an Airedale. Yeah, I'd love for her to be there. I'd love for my immediate family to be present.
Yeah.
I love for them to support one another.
Yeah.
And to find solace in one another.
This is so amazing to me that this sister had this conversation with you at a time when you were perfectly healthy.
Oh, yeah. I think it was in my 40s.
And I love that. Think about this, because it's going to happen.
Yeah.
And live your life intentionally. All those things that you want people to say at your memorial, live that now so that they will say those things. So I think it's wonderful that she said that to you.
Yeah.
Think about that.
I know I hadn't. It's great that you flagged that, because I hadn't thought about how much it resonated, but it's really stuck with me.
You've not forgotten it all.
Oh
these
no.
years.
And I knew instantly, the truth of it may not come to you in the way that you expect, but it was a huge gift, and
Wow.
I'm grateful for it now. I really am. Hospice is another really interesting thing. I kind of like what you were saying before about Catherine and just the good fortune of her having that conversation with me when I was much younger. And I feel that way about hospice. Like, welcome them, establish the relationship now.
Smart.
Not at the very, at the 11th hour.
Okay.
But not everyone feels that way or can do it.
Yeah.
And it's been interesting to me to see the relief on doctors' faces when I've mentioned to them, oh, I made an appointment and had an educational meeting about hospice. They just like relax.
Oh,
And they're
thank
like,
God.
yeah, like,
Because it's
okay.
such a battle. It's almost always such a battle to get people to sign up.
Really?
Because for most people, hospice means you're giving up, you're going to die. We don't want it. I don't want to hear anything about hospice.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. No, because for me, it's like, oh no, I want to learn about how I can keep living as comfortably as possible.
Yes.
As fully as possible.
Yes.
When I've made the decision, no more treatment.
Yeah.
And so, but I realize what a burden it is for healthcare professionals when the topic lingers, but it's like it's in the air, but no one has named it. Mm-hmm. And it's very, very difficult for them to raise the issue.
Yeah. I worked in hospice for many years, and I can tell you unequivocally, the families that kind of did the best were in hospice the longest, because we could help them, educate them, and say, this is what you can expect.
Right.
Oh, maybe you should do X instead of Y. That will make your lives better.
Right.
The people that were in hospice, oh my gosh, Julie, 2 days, not enough time.
No.
It was just like a car crash.
Do you know Sally Tisdale's book, Advice for Future Corpses?
Yes, I think I read it ages ago.
Yeah, she wrote it in like the late 2000 teens. But that's a great book for sort of walking people through.
Yeah.
This is what happens to a body as
Yeah.
it starts to shut down.
Yeah.
They are going to be scary,
Yeah.
particularly for loved ones to witness. But I think less so if you realize, oh, this is part of what happens with the body as it shuts down. This is what happens when someone goes inward.
Yes.
And they speak less. And
Well, did you go to birthing classes before
Yes,
you delivered?
yeah.
So exactly the same thing. If you don't know anything about childbirth and you go into a room where a woman is laboring, that'll scare the bejesus out of
yeah,
you.
I think that's a really good analogy.
Oh
It's
my gosh.
both the bookends. So I welcome the advice and the counsel that hospice can offer. And when I've exhausted treatments or I'm ready to stop treatment, then I'll turn to them.
What would you want anyone to know about facing your own death?
The truth, which for me is that it is scary. Mm-hmm. There are a lot of unknowns. There is pain and suffering. Yeah. And life is very rich. Yeah. So many things drop away when you're really focused on your mortality and the short amount of time that you may have left.
Sitting here listening to you, if I had to describe your experience and journey, I would say, Julie Davis, it was all about compassion for her. Because you said that so many times, you've mentioned it, and you exude that yourself. And I think that's just a beautiful thing to have received out of this experience, is this sense of compassion for other people. There are gifts to be received.
Many,
Yeah.
Really many. Yeah, I think that's true. I really think that's true, Deborah. Which is not to say that you have to have a terminal diagnosis to develop more compassion, but it sure gets you there a lot faster.
Boy, it's like the bullet train, right?
The bullet train. I keep going, no, put me on like the milk run. I'd like to go every stop. You want me to go on the bullet train.
Can we slow things down?
Yeah, it's true. I have this great craniosacral therapist, and she asked me this really great question early on, which I just promptly burst into tears, but it was a really good question. She just asked me so simply, how do you want to meet this? And I think that question is there for all of us. I mean, that's what I'm living with daily. How do I want to meet this? You know, some days it's easy when you're feeling great, you know, or relatively great. It's harder on days where you're really not in great shape. But I think I would want people to know that's a great question to ask yourself. How do you want to meet this? You know, it's interesting to me, lungs are the body organ that are associated with grief. And I've thought a lot about the grief that I have held and the grief I hold, and then, you know, how to do that more lightly or differently. Because it's almost as if my lungs are saying, we can't hold this amount of grief. So I think about that sometimes.
Where are you with what happens after you die?
I don't know how to answer that question. I think that, you know, I'm living as long as I'm living.
Yeah.
And then, you know, life as I've known it clearly ends. I don't think that we go to purgatory.
Yeah.
I think that people experience that, enough of that on earth. Whether that's wishful thinking on my part, I just don't want to, you know, confront that. But I really do think that there is more than enough suffering and pain in people's lives that I don't think of dying as you're in this holding place and we're assessing, were you good? Were you bad?
Yeah.
Do you go to purgatory? No. So I think my life ends, and
Is there something beyond?
I don't know the answer to that question, and I think about that,
Yeah.
but I don't know the answer to that yet. I don't know if I will.
So here's my final say for today. I really love that question. How are you going to meet this? Are you going to meet this challenge with fear or curiosity? I think we've all seen people face challenges by just, you know, shutting down. They're curled up, fists clenched, eyes shut, everything tight and contracted. And if you try this right now, just for a few seconds, you'll see that it takes so much energy to go through life like that. So what if instead of contracting, we expand? We open our eyes, we walk forward with our palms up, our hands outstretched with an attitude of curiosity, saying to ourselves, not, oh no, 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 but, I wonder what this experience will be like. How will I be changed? Who will I become? When you go into any challenge with an attitude of curiosity, it totally changes your perspective. It suddenly becomes more interesting and less intimidating. And best of all, if there are any gifts to be received in your experience, with your hands outstretched and your palms up, you're ready to catch them. I mean, it's pretty hard to receive anything when we're all closed up and shut down. And then, like I said, it takes so much energy to do that. So thanks for listening to The Final Say, Conversations with People Facing Death. I'm your host, Deborah Jarvis, and I also edit and produce this podcast. Please let me know what you thought of today's episode. Hop over to our website, thefinalsaypodcast.com. And of course, I really appreciate you leaving me a review wherever you get your podcasts, because that helps a lot to get more people listening to these amazing stories. So that's it for now. Thank you, as always, to Blue Dot Sessions for providing music, and deepest gratitude to Julie Davis for opening her heart to us. May you find beauty and joy in your day.